This is The Media Show with Jack Houghton.
Hello and welcome to The Media Show. I'm your host, Jack Houghton, and this week we saw the bloated, the unaccountable ABC dig its heels in over this segment. And not only does the ABC say that this segment is editorially justifiable, it is using your tax dollars to defend the sick individual who wrote the stick rape sketch. I've never seen this before. The filmmaker is not an ABC employee, yet the ABC, which has also told Australians that it is internally investigating the segment, published this to its website. Race Around the World contestant Kate McGuinness has asked the ABC to share the following statement on her behalf, which the ABC supports, whatever that means. Goes on to say, this is her quote now, "The sense of humour featured in each of my films on Race Around the World program is farcical. In no way was it my intention to promote violence. My writing is cartoonish and always satirical. Unfortunately, jokes do not land with everyone. Its purpose was never to be taken literally. I apologise to anyone I've offended." Okay, so it's not the literal rape and murder of Gina Reinhardt. It's actually some very clever metaphor that you uneducated viewers completely missed. Now, is the metaphor that the downtrodden should rise up against the rich and kill them with sticks? Yeah, okay, no, we got that, Kate. That is the call to murder that we are actually a little bit concerned about. But it is any surprise that this person has the IQ of a termite, and her CV, before the ABC hired her, included social media videos like this. Of course, the person who thinks rape and murder is clever satire also mocks soldiers who gave their life for her legal freedom to be satirical in the first place. But there is more to this than just the ABC's failures, because we know that managing director Hugh Marks is impotent. He wastes your money and has no intention to change or be accountable. The ABC is done, and it is only a matter of time before politicians unravel the entire operation and redirect the $1.3 billion every year elsewhere. I see reform as an inevitability. Be it at the next election or in 10 years, the ABC will either go or look dramatically different. Only one side of politics supports it, and they only do so because it helps them politically with sympathetic coverage. The moment that this side loses power, the ABC is finished. And that's why Labor protects the ABC when it does something which is indefensible.
It worries me, and I don't think that is right. But what I'm saying is we've got to make sure, either with freedom of speech and satire and the opportunity to hold in particular, political leaders or other well-known figures, of which Gina is.
I, as the Labor Minister for Communications, respect the editorial independence of the ABC. If I spent all my time weighing in day to day on the scandals and outrages, valid or not, in both sport and communications, I wouldn't have time to do anything substantive.
Freedom of speech, outrages. And Labor's Jerome Laxale thinks that wanting to murder someone is on par with criticising his party's shoddy economic record.
Labor rightly called out that ditch the witch language that was used against the Victorian Premier recently. Shouldn't this just be a simple apology that the tone is off here?
Look, that's the first time I've seen that, and I was just there taken aback a little bit. The language isn't right, and I think you've heard the Prime Minister say this over and over. The language just needs to be toned down a little bit by leaders, by broadcasters, by people on this very channel, Trudy.
Jerome Laxale, everyone. The problem is actually us criticising him for using our tax dollars to make stuff like this. More. What about that censorious lefty, Julie Inman-Grant from eSafety, who gave a press conference this week literally asking for more powers to stamp out targeted violent abuse online? Surely Julie Inman-Grant will find that rape and murder, that segment that the ABC produced, she'll find it a little bit problematic.
That would be a matter for the Australian Communications and Media Authority, who is the broadcasting regulator.
And that's why this case is so fascinating to me. Because of all the rhetoric you hear about domestic violence, violence against women, respectful discourse online, when a clear problem occurs at the hands of radical lefties, it is ignored or downplayed, or worst of all, it's justified by people like Hugh Marks. The censorious speech framework only binds those on one side of politics. The regulatory body ACMA could not even be bothered responding to questions from our journalists this week until I wrote to its chair, Narita O'Loughlin, demanding an explanation. The hard left has captured these organisations, and this case has exposed Labor's so-called progressive pro-women policies as being fraudulent. Well, joining me this week to discuss is Executive Director of the Samuel Griffith Society, Mia Schlicht, and of course, News24.com.au afternoon editor and the host of the James Bolt shows across all of our digital platforms. James Bolt, welcome to the desk.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Now, let's start with it. We've just heard that Gina Rinehart is planning to take legal action against the ABC, and this is another case of the ABC digging its heels in when quite obviously there is something wrong. You can't advocate for somebody to be raped and murdered with a stick. It doesn't matter how clever you think you are with metaphors or satire. Presumably, our tax dollars are going to be caught up defending this if they continue to dig in their heels.
I cannot believe the effort that has gone into defending something that is so just completely indefensible. I mean, you read out the apology there. Like, let's get granular here. Like, an apology is a contrition that you have done something wrong, that you have acted in a way that you regret. When you say, I apologize for the offence caused, what you are saying is that you regret the one thing that you can't control, which is the interpretation of someone else. It is a non-apology. And for the
I'm sorry you feel
I'm
that
sorry
way.
you feel that way. It literally is what she said. Now, I've got to give her some credit because she's done more to show contrition and show regret than the ABC does. It's still up on their social media and on their website. But it's just, it was a horrible sketch. It wasn't funny. There was no artistic element to it. It shouldn't be defended. It's just, I cannot believe the ABC have dug their heels in so deeply on this.
And Mia, I want to bring you in. Welcome back to the show. I want to get your thoughts on these very senior Labor women and the eSafety Commissioner, Julie Inman-Grant, who normally would call something like this out. I thought it would be a no-brainer. Surely they would just say this is horrible and this should be taken down. What do you make of them refusing to weigh into this issue?
Well, it's completely just exposed, Jack, the hypocrisy of Labor, but particularly women in Labor. And I will point out, when you look at Julie Inman-Grant's record of other things she has censored and chosen to take down from the internet because she's deemed it to be offensive or harmful, it's quite shocking that she's not deeming this particular sketch to be harmful. I mean, I think there was a post some time ago with a concerned parent putting out a tweet about the amount of trans ideology that was being taught to her child in school. And Julie Inman-Grant decided that needed to be censored, and she took that down. So to me, this just speaks volumes that not only are we refusing to take it down, but that everyone is digging their heels in and justifying it. And what I think is really, really interesting is this is the first time that we have seen the left use this response, this rebuttal of, oh, well, it's fine that it was offensive and it was probably inciting violence because we found it funny. Now, I know you and I can agree, and I think James can agree as well, that no one above the humour of maybe a 3-year-old boy would find this kind of humour funny. But as far as I'm aware, when Labor was pushing through their various hate speech regulations or other regulations limiting freedom of speech, never did they, in that legislation, scope out any exceptions for someone finding something funny. But here in this case, because the author thought this was humorous and satirical, this one gets a free pass. And I think that really does just expose that Labor is a party without principles. The ABC is a platform without principles, and they've completely gone the wrong way here.
I agree. And James, there are a few things worse than having a legal framework which disproportionately punishes one subset. And I think that's what this has exposed. You can set up the rules and the law and the regulatory framework from ACMA however you want, but if action is only taken against one side of politics, that's a really bad system to have set up. The other thing is, Mia's right. It's hilarious to have people suddenly talking about nuance and satire and freedom of speech. I never thought I would have a hardened lefty defend something like this as freedom of speech. How can they do that? And then the next time somebody on the right steps a little bit out of the orthodoxy into an area where they probably shouldn't, how can they have any integrity to prosecute an argument against that?
Yeah, let's do things there. There's like, can you imagine if a Conservative did this? And I kind of feel that when you say something like that, there's the idea that Conservatives would say stuff like that if there was a level playing field. They wouldn't. Like, the ABC, that was a contestant that was flying to Scotland. They shot the video back. It was presented in front of a panel of judges and critiqued, cut up, broadcasted, uploaded to the website. And thinking of News24 as the ABC's antithesis, at any step of that, if anyone got a hint that some left-wing figure is not even political, I know Julia Gillard's political, but not in a current role. If someone said something like that about Julia Gillard, it would have been cut out a while ago.
If one of our guys did that, we'd sack him on the spot.
Exactly.
We would sack them on the spot. It wouldn't even be a second thought.
Yeah.
It would be, that's inappropriate. You're clearly advocating violence. It doesn't matter if you're right or left.
Exactly.
The fact that they're not looking at this objectively is just astounding.
The second thing is that, it is very interesting that when a left-wing person makes those sort of comments, it's satire, it's funny, get with the times, boomer. But if a right-wing person says it, it's a mask-off moment that really reveals the true nature of that entire movement. I step back and look at the political world right now, okay? We've had Anne Widdecombe horrifically murdered. We have had multiple assassination attempts on Donald Trump. We have had a scourge of left-wing political violence. I mean, the murder of the CEO of the Allied Healthcare, presumably done by a left-wing activist. Look, this has got to be a all of left moment to just go, this kind of rhetoric, we can say, oh, it's satire, it's humour. No, people are listening. People are taking up the offer to be violent, and we've got to cut it out from our own system.
They're listening to your defence as well. I mean, that's the other thing, that the justification for Hugh Marks to say it's editorially justified, you've created this entire subset where this level of speech is justified. I mean, they're directly saying it's justified under a humour defence, essentially. Anyway, look, there's plenty of stories to get to, so let's move on. I want to talk about Jacinta Allen and the coup against her. But first of all, her performance at these press conferences. I want to play a little bit of a clip up of some of her best moments engaging with our media.
You look disinterested. I'll make 2 points on this. And can I ask that you retract that last point? No, you're not. Could I ask that you retract that last comment? For this press conference to continue, I ask that you retract that last observation. No. No, it is not. And I would ask you to rephrase your question because, no. I'm not going to stand here and take questions on integrity. Rachel, are you giving an example or providing a proposition? We should come to all of these debates and discussions in a responsible way, one that does not put reckless misinformation into the public debate that causes harm. If you can let me finish, Rachel, if you can let me finish, your question shows grave disrespect to the Treasurer who is representing the government here today. I don't think you would make that comment about other treasurers.
Mia, I want to bring you in here. A very frosty saga that we've had with her at the helm. What did you make of the resignation, though? What did you make of the tears, the reference to her womanhood? Do you think there'll be any sympathy for somebody that has been so ferocious their entire political career? Do you think the tears will help soften that image and have any kind of sympathetic legacy?
Look, I think it's an interesting one, Jack, and I think playing that compilation and then putting it side by side with the speech she gave during her resignation really does just symbolise why it was time for her to step down. Because, first of all, in her speech about the resignation, it was all about herself. At no point there could she admit that Labor had got things wrong in the past or that there was a way to go to build back the trust with Victorians. And I think that's exactly why you can see that Labor's polling numbers in Victoria have plummeted, because they really have lost that trust, particularly with their base. And then looking at the way she used to treat the media, this is exactly why that trust has fallen. There seems to be this trend at the moment with politicians in Australia, but also around the world, showing this hostility with the media. We've seen it with Pauline Hanson a few times, with Trump a few times. But the difference is with those individuals, it works because there is a sense amongst viewers that the media class does have a bias. And so you have these figures on the centre-right who are challenging those views. But why it didn't work with Jacinta Allen is, particularly here in Victoria, there is a sense amongst Victorians the media class was on Labor's side, particularly after the COVID-19 pandemic, where most of the media class failed to hold Daniel Andrews and the Labor Party to account. So there was this idea that the media was on their side. So when you see Jacinta Allen being so hostile with them and refusing to answer pretty basic questions, it really just added to this sense that there is no accountability, because if she can't even answer to a side that is there to support her and who has lifted her side up many times in the past, then there is no hope of accountability at all.
Well said. James, your thoughts?
What you just saw in that clip is someone with all of the Daniel Andrews mannerisms, but absolutely none of the authority. And I think that's ultimately how Jacinta Allen's going to be remembered. It's like some sort of, the lead singer left the band tried to keep making music, and it just never worked the same. And it's unbelievable to me how little media attention media scrutiny she would get when she treats the journalists like dirt. Like, stand up for yourself, stand up for your colleagues, ask harder questions, and just don't put up with being treated like that.
The retraction was hilarious. The retract the question.
Yeah.
That is potentially the favourite moment.
As if you're in a court. Like, no, this is an open press conference.
It was the weirdest thing, as if people don't have video access and they can't watch it forever. What does that achieve? It was this very aggressive, threatening way. You just kind of she took off the mask a little bit from my point of view. Anyway, I want to play a grab from Raph Epstein, who talks about the coup.
Can you forgive a coup if it fails or it succeeds? Cowards is the word that's been used to describe the plotters. Could you forgive a coup? Getting texts like this, I think they call it rats up a sinking ship. I do want to know if you would forgive a coup. Someone, Kirsty's texted this, no to coups. What a gift to the LNP and One Nation.
Mia, let's bring you in. What do you make of that segment? Was it a coup, and is the coup defensible?
Well, I think that's just more evidence of, Jack, what I was just talking about many of the media being in Jacinta Allen's pocket and her team's pocket to call this a coup. Look, there's no doubt, yes, she was stabbed in the back. That's pretty clear. But I think it was justifiable. There was no way that Jacinta Allen could take Labor to the next election in November and it be in some way a positive result. However, I will say the problem is as I was talking about before, with this brand of trust and authenticity and accountability with the base here in Victoria, you've now got the guy standing up there who is now calling for integrity in the party, the same guy who was standing next to Jacinta Allen a month ago and was using his daughter as a shield to say, I will never roll you and I will not stab you in the back, and then went back and did the exact same thing a month later. So is he the right guy to fix that brand image in that particular area? I'm not sure, but I guess it's a long way until the November election and anything can happen here in Victoria.
They're shocking at press conferences, James. I agree with Mia about the coup being self-inflicted and owed and earned. But if you're a voter in Victoria, wouldn't you have wanted to be able to send her off? They're taking that away from voters, and that's where it's a bit sneaky. A couple of months, you could have just let Victorians decide, but they've taken that away and tried to give it a bit of a facelift. And that's why I don't like the coup for a very different reason that Ref Epstein doesn't like the coup.
I wanted to do the backstabbing.
Yeah, let me coup.
Yeah, I love the idea that Ben Carroll gets out there. He's like, hey, I'm not Daniel Andrews. I'm not Jacinta Allen. If you look slightly to the left in any single Jacinta Allen press conference, you see Ben Carroll. Like, this is the same government. And I also love, like, Raf Epstein there. He both recognise that it's a coup and rats leaving a sinking ship. So it can't be both things. Like, it can't be a really well-oiled machine that the military junta has taken over and also a sinking ship that Raps need to commandeer. Like, it's got to be one.
Well said. Well, quick break. James, Mia, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Stick around, though, because when we return, the best moments from the disgraced Anthony Fauci's train wreck Senate hearing with Kosher Garda. Welcome back to the show. Disgraced physician Anthony Fauci has appeared before a Senate committee probing the origins of coronavirus. And of course, he wasn't very forthcoming, to say the least.
What day of the week is it today?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
What color tie you're wearing?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
What color is the carpet in front of you?
Dr. Fauci, can you just turn around and look at the people behind you? All you have to do is look up from your lawyers and look at the people who were absolutely shamed for saying what we know now to be the truth. You can't even look at them? It was about 6 years ago today that I decided I'm going to give up my businesses, sell them all, run for office, run for the United States Senate. Here I am sitting in front of you 6 years later saying, who the do you think you were for doing that? It is a total disgrace what you did to this country.
Joining me this week to discuss is News24 contributor Kosher Garda. Kosher, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Very well. It's been a while, but we never miss a beat in the world of media.
Now, I'm so glad you're here to discuss this because the Fauci issue is something that Sky News, before we rebranded to News24, absolutely championed the coverage. And it's good to see the world catch up. What do you make of after all of it, after all the exposés, all the revelations, all the connections, the proximal origins scandal, all of that, he's got nothing to say. He's even been pardoned, but he still has nothing to say.
Mm-hmm. You know, I think there's two lenses to this, Jack. One is the legal one. And there is an interesting legal question here because what legal analysts are saying is that the pardon that Joe Biden infamously granted him from going back to 2014 before the pandemic up until his last day in office, Biden's last day in office, means that he is by definition not criminally liable. And therefore, he actually can't plead the fifth, which now is going around the world the way that hearing went down. So I would actually expect to see a little bit more from the Republicans on that. They're talking about bringing him into contempt, holding him in contempt and having a contempt of Congress vote next week. And they're going to try to push that legal boundary as much as they can. The other bigger issue, of course, is in the court of public opinion, how he's doing. And whenever you plead the fifth, it sort of does give off this vibe of guilt, and in this case, ridiculousness, wouldn't even answer the color of his tie and so on. And, I think the world is catching up. There are true believers who still look at him and various health bureaucrats as the saviors that they weren't. But more and more people are just very, very angry. And he, I think, will live on in infamy because as time goes on, he just looks worse and worse.
Yeah, and Kosher, you're so right. I think in the court of public opinion, and a reasonable person looking at a performance where somebody is asked the colour of their tie, and they don't want to be tricked into saying something incriminating because anything he says could potentially be incriminating according to the advice of his counsel, of course. And the public sees that and they form a view. But journalists, I want to bring your attention to this article by The Guardian, because of course, The Guardian chooses to side with Anthony Fauci over Shari Markson, who's a News24 journalist who wrote a book, What Happened in Wuhan, made a documentary that we ran on our channel about the origins, about the likelihood that it did come from a lab in China. But buried away in a Fauci diary is a reference to Fauci thought it was nonsense. Of course, The Guardian leads with that, not the evidence of the lack of integrity, of all the character issues, the fact he won't answer any questions and his integrity is completely in the drain. No, they lead with, well, Fauci says this, which validates the fact that The Guardian also thought it was nonsense.
the Guardian's going to Guardian. I said that there are these true believers who either looked at Fauci and health bureaucrats as saviors, or just broadly, it's become a very partisan issue, and they look at establishment institutions, including the public health institution, as beyond reproach. And so that's probably coloring what the Guardian's position is here. And then I also think there's probably just good old-fashioned jealousy. They're probably jealous of Shari and her reporting on that, and so they don't want to throw her a bone or give her credit where credit is due, and it's easier for them to sort of bash her and get behind Fauci and just what he represents. Now it's almost in their minds probably bigger than the issues that they don't want to relitigate, but it's more he's the face of public health, and how dare we make a mockery of public health is the spin they're going to apply.
Oh, definitely, definitely. Well, moving on, let's take a look at what Rosie O'Donnell has been up to.
You can't say rapist, you'll get in trouble. Well, CBS got in trouble. They capitulated. They did exactly what Stephen Colbert said they did. They gave him a bribe. And it's unforgivable.
Koshigata, did CBS give Donald Trump a bribe? Is that a fair characterization of the situation?
I don't think so. He very famously sued them, and he's been suing all the media outlets. One can argue that Trump tends to be a little bit litigious, or he uses the legal profession as an avenue of attack, or you could say an avenue of defense, because they've been on the attack to him. And they, of their free will, settled that. One of the key things in there that they settled on was that CBS gave a lot of favorable editing to Kamala Harris. I think actually I was on with you, Jack, talking about this at that time, and they cut her very rambling answers during the lead up of into the election and made her look a little bit better. And that's what he sued them about, and they settled. So that's what that was. And Ana Navarro's question over there that you can't use the R word, that's been adjudicated as well, because they're talking about the E. Jean Carroll case against Trump. He was not found guilty of rape in the legal sense. And that's what George Stephanopoulos of ABC found himself in hot water on, because he kept saying that repeatedly. And then Trump sued him and ABC by extension, and they also settled. All of these settlements keep flowing into the ballroom and the Trump library. So that's kind of a little bit funny as well.
Yeah, the Kamala Harris edits were extraordinary. She made sense for once. So that should have been the first hint that there was something a little off with that edit. Let's talk about this Disney story where they've hit back at the FCC. The FCC obviously is doing a DEI probe into the lack of political diversity, among other things, at the network. They've now hit back and they've said, well, this is just an attack because they didn't like what Stephen Colbert was saying about Trump, and this is all political and there's no substance. What do you make of that argument?
This, I think, is going to run through the court system. Trump's FCC is trying to punch or counterpunch a little bit against the media, and the code of statutes is so large that you can find anything in there to go after any entity. And the DEI one is kind of funny because these media companies and other companies have been touting that structure for as long as we can remember, and then they don't abide by their own rules. So there's a bit of poetic justice to use that as the attack vector. They conversely are saying, well, it's unfair retaliation. As a media outlet, they've got First Amendment rights and they can do things in any cover topics in any manner in which they wish. But then there's more to it as well, where if you're hosting political guests, I think The View and ABC is one of the ones in the crosshairs of the FCC, you have to give equal time, because otherwise that's sort of a benefit in kind, not in cash, if you're giving more airtime to Democrats, which they tend to do, and less airtime to Republicans. So I think there's many angles over here being litigated by the FCC. Disney has the biggest legal army on earth, so they are going to defend themselves against that vigorously, and we shall see where it all winds up in the courts.
No, it's going to be a lot of fun, Kosha, and so will Discovery. That will be a lot of fun. Thank you so much for your insights, as always. We love having you on the show. Quick break, but stick around, because coming up, the legendary Jared Henderson runs us through the week and some very bizarre takes from the ABC. Joining me now, as he does each and every week, is media watchdog columnist for News24, the legendary Jared Henderson, on the desk with me to talk about all things the ABC doing what the ABC loves to do, close its eyes and pretend that there's not a problem when the reasonable person, the average person looking at it, will just completely disagree.
So we're talking about the Reinhardt case. Well, the problem there is the ABC invariably goes into denial. The first thing they do is to go into denial. That's pretty automatic. And then to argue about things internally. Then if they have to fix things, they finally do. Then it's invariably too late. The easiest thing to do if you're in any problem, if you've made some accusation, which pretty well everyone would regard is unreasonable, is to apologise and to correct and to remove. That's the easy way to handle it. But I think because of the internal machinations there, the managing director and editor-in-chief really doesn't prevail because you've got all these journalists and producers and others underneath. So he doesn't prevail. But the idea, you can't resolve problems at the ABC when you're the managing director and editor-in-chief by giving it to the ombudsman, who in fact is your employee. I mean, this is ridiculous. The editor-in-chief,
it's an
managing
internal
director
complaint system that pretends independent.
Yeah, but the boss has got to make the decision. In an organisation like News24, the boss makes the decision.
Can't outsource it.
Yeah.
He has utterly failed in this situation.
Yes.
And in my view, it was only ever going to end in litigation if they were refusing to budge. We said on the program last week that this would be gone within 2 weeks. I still believe that. I still believe that they're going to have to get rid of it. But it's the delaying in between. There was this really strange statement that they put out saying,
yes,
this is a statement from Kate McGuinness, the filmmaker, which we support. Weird thing to say.
But we don't apologise.
We're not commenting on
it. And she has what I call a non-apology apology, that if anyone's been upset, well, I think Gina Reinhardt was upset. So
I'm sorry that you're so upset.
Yeah, those things are useless. But, I mean, they shouldn't put it out at all. I mean, that was completely useless.
And
so what they
to say as well, we're not commenting on it, because we're reviewing it and there is this process playing out, but we endorse her statement clearing it. It doesn't make sense.
Well, if someone offers you an apology, you can make an apology, that's the easy way out of it. Just make it. I mean, a lot of people don't do that. A lot of people go running straight for defamation actions. That didn't happen on this occasion. The ABC was asked if they would apologise, and they didn't.
They had an opportunity.
They had an opportunity.
The inevitable cost that is going to be hit to taxpayers, which always happens. The ABC just tries to defend stuff until the moment they can't. We even see it on the other hand with Lattouf. Antoinette Lattouf should never have been sacked. She shouldn't have been hired.
Shouldn't have been
but
sacked.
She shouldn't have been sacked. And so they're irresponsible with our funds, is what I would argue. Now, look, let's move on. There's lots of other stories as well. Laura Tingle. Now, let's play this moment from Media Watch about Laura Tingle.
It's a sad fact. The commercial media, so crippled by revenue losses, has simply decided it can no longer afford to devote the resources to the story of Sudan that audiences need it to. A case study, if there's ever been one, in what happens when the world looks away.
Well, what's missing here is any look at the ABC. I mean, this is true about commercial media. They haven't covered the Sudan, and as Bessa says, well, it's difficult for them. But what about public broadcasters? The ABC has a global affairs editor.
Where is she?
I don't know. Laura Tingle. And what has she said about Africa? Or what has she said about the Sudan? She's been in the job for quite a while now. And I've had a look at what's available on the website of what she's written, and I monitor what she said. I don't think she's ever mentioned the Sudan. So if you're going to go on television like Linton Bessa did and then say, look, commercial media hasn't done this, and you say, what about public media funded by the taxpayer? And what about Laura?
A damn good job yourself.
If you're going to have a global affairs editor, you've got to realise Sudan's part of the world, you know.
Well, they just swan around. They treat it like a retirement post.
No one knows quite what she's doing.
It's a reward for all the good work she's done for the Comrade operation. That's the only...
For the comrades,
Well, if she's not filing content...
Well, she writes stuff.
Very often.
Not often, no. But I mean,
a lot of it's strange.
And it's not really worth reading. You don't learn. You don't learn anything.
Let's talk about Sally Sara. Loves to give people soft interviews on a certain side of politics. Let's take a look at this.
Did Sally McManus get it wrong?
In listening to that, and as you say, it was Sally's first interview back in 2018, she drew a very clear distinction. And Sally, that distinction was about industrial laws. She has never, and I have never, defended any criminality, any violence, any corruption. And those laws are there for a reason, and that's why action is now being taken and has been taken over the last 2 years in terms of the construction industry. So I think that that distinction was very clear and it stands today.
What's next for you, Michelle O'Neill?
What's next? The issue is what Sally McManus said. Now, to be fair to Sally McManus, she ended up going after the CFMEU and she was threatened and probably still is. But in the first interview, what she said in relation to the CFMEU, when the question was put to her, and it was played in that interview, what she said was that it's okay to not obey an unjust law. And she did not define what was a just law and what was an unjust law. So if everyone followed that example, I mean, society would collapse. Now, it was really up to Sally Sarah to say, well, it's more than that. Now, what had to be acknowledged was that Sally McManus started off very badly. And on this issue, she then changed their mind. But initially, she gave comfort to the CFMEU. And look where that left us.
And it could have been pointed out.
Yeah.
Jared Henderson, thank you so much for your insights, as always. We really appreciate it. Now, that's all we have time for this evening, but stick around because up next is Lefties Losing It.